on Sky there was this film about this woman whose husband died in this avalanche. And 2 years later she finds his sperm in the freezer and gets pregnant with a turkey baster.
The video I'm going to talk about today, I've actually had some questions on this, so I thought I'd do a video on it because it's a good subject, it's a cool one that I've got some experience in. Save money, drive standards. So this is ultimately around driving the profitability of your business without sacrificing the front end experience for the customer or the user, because I think particularly in the current climate it's very easy to be frightened and be scared because there's tough challenges facing all of us. Business as we know it is not the same, but actually as we start to get back up to normal in the coming weeks, shops will open, businesses will start to open, and I don't believe anytime soon we're going to get back to the life that we once had, but there will be new normal, as is this phrase that keeps flying around. There are ways of saving money in your business that can drive the profitability but actually raise the standards. And so the example I'm going to use is when I went into Leicester City Football Club. I've said in previous videos, at the time losing somewhere between £500,000 and £750,000 a year, and the standards weren't great. So actually what we did was we had a real focus, and I'm going to hone in on particular examples. There was a multitude of things that we did to take that business back to break even within a 12-month period, but I'll go into those in a separate video. But I thought this video I would give you specific examples where savings were found, but actually in finding those savings we drove the performance of the business at the same time. The number one thing we did was we put managers at the front of the business, including myself. So in a football ground, any of you that's been to a sporting stadium, a music event, you've got the management team, and then you've got restaurant supervisors, kiosk supervisors, restaurant managers, team leaders. These are all in the industry variable paid staff, as we call them, but things like 0-hour contracts. On any given match day at Leicester, I'd maybe have 200 or 300 variable staff, including the chefs. At the Rico Arena, at the peak of some of the biggest events we were doing, maybe up to 800 staff to deliver a particular concert or match day. But using Leicester as the example, what we did was actually we started to move away from subbing out the restaurant managers, the external sourcing of them, and I placed the full-time team into the restaurants, into the kiosks, because what that did was it would bring down the day rate. So let's say a manager gets paid £250 a match day. It's not an unreasonable sum of money for someone of their ability. Some can command much more. For the sake of this example, let's say there was 6 restaurants that we outsourced, £250 a day. That's £1,500 a match day. And on average, we were doing about 30 matches a season. It's £45,000 we've just saved. And how we ensured that the standards didn't drop was we then took things like the food and beverage manager, the assistant F&B manager, the concourse and retail manager and assistant manager, and these people were salaried staff, so they were part of the overhead. And although they typically oversee an area, what we did was we put them at the heart of it. So people like myself, I came down level and I would oversee an area. So I wouldn't directly manage an individual area, but actually you see and achieve nothing from your office. It's very easy to become an office warrior. You've worked your way up the ladder, don't have to get on the coalface of the business anymore. That is the wrong behaviour. And what I'm using here is an example in sporting stadia or hospitality or catering or food and beverage. But this is just as relevant if you were in retail, in product services, even if you're in a call centre. There are times where you can place your management team at the coalface. So what does that do? It saved £45,000 a season. But what it also did was it meant we understood the experience from the customer point of view. It's very easy to get lost in your own propaganda. We've driven the standards, we're working really hard. But actually, from the moment you've given that brief, if you aren't at the front line, you are at the behest of a set of staff that even if you've got them as motivated as they can possibly be, they are not in it to the same extent you are. For me, I'm not talking about everybody, the bulk of my staff were driven through students in the city or people with second jobs topping up income. This was not the career of their choice. This was a means to an end or a stopgap. And that's absolutely fine. That's how the world turns over. But as the management team, you have to acknowledge that. You have to make this as fun for them as possible and engaging for them as possible. Because at £5, £6, £7, £8 an hour, whatever the minimum wage was at the time and keeps increasing, it's on you, not them. You as the manager of that business is ultimately responsible for the match day experience of, in some of the stadiums I was working at, 30, 40, 45,000 people. And a bit like how you achieve your objectives, it's bite-sized pieces. You have to be responsible for the experience, not as the whole, although that sits with you in the accountability terms. You as the leader have to put yourself in the position where you can legislate for the experience in one hospitality suite to the next hospitality suite, from one privately owned box to the next privately owned box, to 30, 35,000 people sitting in a stadium bowl. And we can get so caught up in the profit, as rightly we should, because that's what makes the world go round and that's what keeps people being paid. But actually, it's a misconception that all cost savings lead to a lowering of standards. It doesn't. So using this example, we've saved £45,000 a year and we've put the staff at the front line, the staff being the full-time employees. So actually, any pain that our casual team were feeling, the management team is feeling now, and that expedites solutions. If you are living it, if you are breathing it, if you are part of that, you very, very quickly improve the standards. But you've also saved £45,000 a year in doing it. So I thought that's a really tidy little example of how you can save money but drive standard. Another example I used, and this again comes from the stadiums, because I think in catering, food and beverage, any service or retail type environment, the moment you put the management team at the heart of the service, you really, really quickly get under the skin of the quality of the product and the customer experience, because in that environment, quality of product and customer experience is everything. If you don't have those two things, you've essentially got nothing, because one stadium is the next stadium is the next stadium. One set of conference rooms is the next set of conference rooms. Your people, your service, your food is the thing that's going to stand you out over and above all of the other competitors in the marketplace. So the senior management team that I recruited, and most of them that have worked with me, would all remember these moments, whether it was Sheffield, Leicester, Edgbaston, Rico, or even the part-time places where I would do big events. I would save money where I could on a chef. A chef can earn anything between £12.50 to £20 an hour. And actually, when you stand on the service line, the chef at the end typically sauces, as we called it. They pour the gravy on at the end. Then my view was, make one of the senior team do that. They need to understand what a chef understands. So we would source those plates, we would tidy them up and make sure they look the best for the customer, because the chef is the expert. They've put all of their love and energy and effort into making that dish the best it can possibly be. Then what we do is bang it into the hand of someone who is typically not motivated by the food and beverage industry. I've said it before, and it's not a problem. They're there as a means to an end till they embark on their true career, typically. So why would you pay £20 an hour to have the most skillful person just bang it in the hands of someone else and slap it out? So I would always stand at the end of the pass, and I would tell the chefs if it didn't look like I thought it was supposed to. I'm a particularly big foodie myself anyway. But I would source it, and at that point you've got the touch point with the staff. They can see you physically taking part in service, and actually from the past you can assess whether we need to go quicker or slower. And in me doing that, I've saved myself the £20 an hour on a chef serving. But actually really what I've done is I've driven the efficiency of service, because the chefs see that the manager of the entire business is stood there serving with them. Don't ask people to do what you wouldn't do yourself. And then the staff who have had the briefing can see that the most senior person in that business cares enough to check every plate out. And if service wasn't going quick enough, all of my senior team that were on that shift, we would go out and serve plates. We would take responsibility for a section, and we would move the food out ourselves to speed it up. Particularly when it came to clearing, and anybody who's been in this industry, particularly when you're talking mass numbers, to keep the turnover of service going at the speed you need it to, clearing's critical. It can really slow everything down. So what we'd find is we'd deliver the food, and I'd always have one or two of the management team on a shift, maybe more than another manager necessarily would. But the quid pro quo was I'd give you your day off back in the week. But for me, the customer experience and bringing the cost base of the business down counted above everything else. And wherever possible, use the salaries that are in the business, because it's such a common mistake that once you've made it to a salaried role, you're a desk jockey. You're going to sit there, and actually the service side of the business, the bit that wins you and loses you your customers, is going to go into the hands of people that are not full-time employees. They come, they go, they pick up their wage, they leave. And how good a job they do is purely predicated on how well briefed they are, how well motivated they are, and how included they are in what is going on. If you're all sat behind a desk, how do you give your business the best chance of succeeding? So I thought this is another small example where something as simple as pouring the gravy can save you money, but it drives the standards of your business because you are at the front line of what you're doing. So at any given point, in my opinion, you want 20% of your full-time team's work days to be at the coalface.
Excuse me. Yeah? This tuna and sweet corn.
Yeah?
It's all mixed up.
Keep going.
Well, what I really wanted was tuna and sweet corn separately.
We don't do tuna and sweet corn, we only do tuna and sweet corn.
I'm not with.
We only do it with a
I'm still not with.
tuna and sweet corn. Un means it's all mushed up, it goes together.
Morecambe and Wise.
Little and large.
Wallace and Gromit.
Baby food. That doesn't go together.
It's all mushed up.
We all know there's processes and purchase orders, booking the staff, all these things that need to keep making the business tick. But there shouldn't be a point, even the accountants, there shouldn't be a point in businesses, as I say, such as retail or food and beverage or hospitality. I can't talk to some of the other industries, but it was certainly relevant in the esports industry when I was running those big events, and it's certainly relevant in the building company, the world's largest Lego model building company. There isn't a point where it isn't relevant for the senior management team to take responsibility and ownership of what the frontline experience is, because that's how you keep customer satisfaction. It's how you keep staff satisfaction and morale high, and it's how you actually have a handle on what's going on in your business, and therefore you can make the most relevant decision as to where savings can be found. And I always talk to savings, not because I'm obsessed with it, because as I've said in other videos, it should be a natural practice. As you talk about growing your sales, you should be talking about saving money where possible, because this culture now of saving money means job losses. It means job losses when management teams are remiss in the way that they manage their business. We can only do so much about the top line, the best marketing plan, the best sales strategies. If your product doesn't continually adapt, maybe the sales start to drop. But the one thing you can permanently manage, because you are in control of it, is your cost base. And as I say, that doesn't mean taking bodies out to bring the cost down. That is all the small efficiencies. So if your management team spend 20% of their working week doing kind of normal day-to-day customer-facing tasks, there are 3 huge benefits. 1, the staff see what best practice looks and feels like, and it's the quickest way to spread best practice amongst a management team. It keeps your management team grounded. You don't get lost in the I am a manager syndrome, or I am a senior team member, or that is below me. They get to see what it actually looks like at the coalface. Number 3, it gives your customer a better service. Somebody whose day-to-day job it is, someone who is employed by that company on a full-time basis, being at the coalface with the customer, experiencing the highs and lows, it can only result in a better service experience for your customer, and therefore better retention. There's so many businesses that I've been in where the management team, and I keep talking about it because it's the most salient example. If you are a customer driven industry, the retailers, the food and beverage, the hospitality, leisure activity, if it's customer service related, if your management team hide behind their desk during game day, as I call it, when the customers are in, you know you have a problem. Everybody needs to be out on the front line. And I mentioned it earlier in the video, even the accountants. So a match day for my accountancy teams in the football stadiums was out there skimming tills, walking around in amongst the customers, skimming tills, get the cash in our pockets, not somebody else's, but actually they can see, hear and look at what's going on, and then they can feed back into the management team about something that might not look right on kiosk 11, where we haven't got eyes on absolutely every kiosk in the building. There isn't a single job where people can't be on the coalface. Get your team out there, because they're the ones that are most invested in the success of your business. Another example I've got of where you can save money and drive standards is big events. So whether that was the Insomnia Gaming Festival or other exhibitions that I've been part of, you typically have what's called your build crew. So in a lot of businesses, a bulk of it's subbed in. Contractors, casual labour, where you're paying inflated hourly rates for the work that can be done. So we used to have a fairly big workforce at, say, Multiply when we were setting up for Insomnia, and setting up an event that's 60,000 square metres is no mean feat, let me tell you. I don't know the exact number, but it's over a quarter, maybe even a third of the whole of the NEC's rentable space. The biggest rentable space in the country, to give you the context, massive. And the workforce, we went through a period of trying different things, but actually the most cost effective way of delivering the show was getting the whole team on site. But, and it came with a but, wasn't always popular, and I got a lot of pressure. There was the balance between, you could hire people on temporary labour, and that was more expensive than bringing your own people. But the own people solution got more expensive if you bring in everybody, as we were, up from Hampshire and putting them in hotels. So we doubled up, or we trebled up. It wasn't a hugely popular decision, but my kind of simple view on life was, we're only here for 5 or 6 days, 7 in the worst case scenario for some. Twinning up is not ideal. Trebling up is less than ideal. But we're all doing long shifts, long hours, and we're a team. We're a united team. You've heard me talk about it in other videos. There's some brilliant relationships, and a lot of those friendships still exist today, many, many, many years later. And actually, when everybody is pulling towards a common goal, how you save money and drive standards, sharing rooms, was really effective because we had a certain amount of temporary labour. It took 250 people to make that event possible. But if you could make a fifth of those people your full-time staff, or a quarter, you save money if they twinned up, number one. Big plus, because anyone who's run big events knows that the margins, you can win and lose in the flip of a coin. But you drove standards, and why it drove standards was because all of your team was present. The people that are paid 365 days a year to be invested in what you are doing. And I think that's one of the misconceptions, is that you look at things like hotel bills or then evening meals, and there's a balance to be had. But actually, it was far easier to get a salesperson to come up, stay in a hotel. And of course, a salesperson doesn't want to necessarily muck in, but that was part of the culture there. So if you've sold it, you can install it, because then you understood the customer experience. When you're sat in an office in Hampshire or Basingstoke or wherever we were at the time, ringing up people, selling in an experience, you've got no idea what it looks like at the coalface, creating that structure that you've sold and delivering the experience for them for the next 4 or 5 days. So one thing that I felt that we did brilliantly was, once it was sold in, everybody looked forward to going to Insomnia. I say everybody, I'm sure there was a few that didn't, because it was long hours and long days. However, once you got there, we were a united team. I'd be unboxing PCs and setting them up. People would be rolling carpets, building shell scheme. But actually, if your sales team were doing it, your HR team were doing it, which they were, and managing things like the volunteers, because we had a few hundred of those, actually everybody understood the customer experience and the experience for the staff. So that when you're planning the next event, you know all the potholes along the journey, you know the things that you should have done differently next time, and it's not just the operators that are experiencing it. Actually, it gives the rest of the team, the accountants, as I said in the football stadium example, they're there, they're shelling tickets out, they're pushing tickets, they are there with you, because it's very easy in an office environment to have the best ideas, to be the passenger seat driver, advising those that have actually got to do it in the best way they should, which is what I'm hoping to try and avoid in these videos. Is I've been there and I have done it, and I'm trying to pass on the benefit of the experience. These aren't statements I'm making, having never done them myself. So we took the staff, put them in a hotel, twinned up. It saved us the money versus the casual labour, but it gave everybody a hands-on experience. It also meant that by the time the customers turned up, whether that was an exhibitor, the sales team were there, they knew them, they'd had the phone calls, there was a relationship. But actually, the behind-the-scenes staff interacted with our customers, and they started to understand what good looked like. So when it came to our version of a game day at Insomnia, everybody pitches up. Everybody gets in the uniform, best foot forward, get that management team and put them at the front of what you're doing, particularly on the big days.